What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com. And today I am joined by Price Carter, a fellow contributor of mine at ArrowheadAddict.com. And I'm very excited to have him on today. We're going to chat about the Super Bowl, Kansas City Chiefs versus San Francisco 49ers in Super Bowl 58. It's going to be a big game. It's going to be an interesting matchup. But before all of that, Price, man, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Cannot complain. Got a Super Bowl, another Super Bowl coming up here in a couple of days. It's always a pleasure to cover that. Knee deep into the draft. The combine's coming up. The Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl just wrapped up, and then personally for me, just brought home a new baby girl. I'm on paternity leave,
Yep,
so
I saw
life
that.
is great. I cannot complain.
Yeah.
Cannot complain.
Yeah, congrats, man. I'm sure it's nice. You just get to be at home right now and you get to digest all the Super Bowl coverage and everything while taking care of your kid. Probably a great time.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Price, man, I won't make you wait any longer. We'll get into it. I got 6 burning questions for you heading into this Super Bowl matchup with the 49ers. First question I have for you, man. What do you make of the Chiefs offense? Does the Chiefs offense have enough to win this game? Do they have enough in them? Because we saw kind of what happened throughout the regular season and how they would have those second half stall outs. They looked better against Miami and Buffalo, but then, of course, in that Baltimore Ravens game, the offense did stall out a little bit in the second half. They didn't score at all. Their lead was built all up in the first half, and they just kind of hung on to that 10-point lead for dear life. Do you think that's more so because of the Baltimore Ravens defense and just how great they are? Or does that worry you a little bit coming into this game? What do you make of the Chiefs offense? Do you think they have enough in them to keep up with the 49ers?
I think the key word in your question there is enough, right? And I think that what is enough has changed a lot over the couple of years. And it's been really interesting to see the analysis of the two teams. Quite frankly, there's a lot of really lazy takes going around out there right now from some of the larger NFL conglomerate. Can't say that word today. Sorry, sleep deprived. Got up at 5 a.m. this morning. But there's just a lot of people who are just kind of copy and pasting takes from 2019 that, the Chiefs are this offensive team, but the 49ers have the better roster, et cetera. And honestly, a lot of that has changed this year. And going back to your question, can they do enough? Yes, they can. And that's because they have started playing like a team that has a great defense. It's been well documented that the Raiders game was the big wake up call for this team as far as how they were playing and realizing like, hey, our defense gave up like 7 points today. They didn't allow a completed pass after the first quarter, and we still lost because we just shot ourselves in the foot over and over again. So they have simplified things, and I think that that's been a huge success. That's been a big part of the reason why this offense has been enough. And I think there are several opportunities in that game against the Ravens in the second half for Mahomes to try to do the things that he used to do that were hero ball, whether it be, throwing something off a back foot, rolling and throwing across his body, trying to make hero plays. But instead, he took some sacks that he might not traditionally take, and he was playing within the defense. And honestly, that was probably the right thing to do. That game was close. It was tight. But the Ravens are a great team and a great defense. I think looking at where this offense is and looking ahead to the Super Bowl, you got to kind of look at where they've been basically since that Bengals game. I think the best the offense has looked was against the Bills in the divisional round, and the Bills were definitely dinged up. They looked great against the Dolphins too, but it was also like, one of the coldest NFL games ever. And the Ravens looked like the best defense in the NFL. Good news is the 49ers have been reeling on defense a little bit here down the stretch. They are not playing their best ball on that, or playing their best football on that side of the ball this year right now. And again, is it enough? To me, I feel like if this offense can get to 21 to 24 points, that feels like a pretty sweet spot in this game. I don't think that you want to be getting into a game in the 30s with the 49ers because they do have more offensive firepower. But and also like just the more you rely on the Chiefs offense, I feel like some of the things that have haunted them in the past are going to come up, whether it be the tackle play or some of the penalties that have occurred or drops, those type of things.
Sure.
But I think yes, they absolutely can do enough, and it goes back to them simplifying things. They've established this offense that runs really through Rice, Pacheco, and Kelsey, and then they just ask Justin Watson, MVS, Clyde, a couple other players, Noah Gray, to make 4 or 5 plays a game, and it's been enough.
Yeah, that's a really good take right there, because I do think in the Baltimore Ravens game, this team could have put together a drive in the second half if they really wanted to, but it definitely did feel like Andy Reid kind of took his foot off the gas a little bit, which has come back to bite him in the past a few times. But it was a different story this time because you had that dominant defense, and Patrick Mahomes, I think, was kind of playing game manager there in the second half. They weren't trying to do too much, but he was never going to make that play that would lose you the game, unlike Lamar Jackson, who made plenty of plays in that game that did lose the Ravens the game.
And you can look at both the Bills and the Ravens game and say, and even the Dolphins game a little bit, and say like, hey, they're 2 or 3 plays away from blowing that game wide open, right?
Yeah.
If they get that fourth down that they missed with Pacheco, and a lot of people think Kelsey converted that anyway on third down. If they get that, this game feels a lot different. If McCole Hardman doesn't fumble the ball against the Bills, it feels, so you can really kind of tell yourself whatever story you want. You can say like, this Chiefs offense is just a few plays away from scoring 30 against a really great defense. Or you could also say they're a few, a L'Jarius Sneed amazing play away from being tied with the Ravens at their stadium. So
sure.
It's interesting. But the good news is it's like, something that the Chiefs offense has shown that they can do now that they weren't able to do in the past is overcome these mistakes. I feel like a couple of months ago, they were not overcoming that McCole Hardman fumble. They were not overcoming because if you remember, they had like 2 straight holding penalties that almost knocked them out of field goal range, but they were able to get enough back to get that 10-point lead going into half. And that ended up being huge.
Yeah, for sure. We'll move on to the next question, though. But yeah, no, really good analysis on that. I agree fully. But next question I got for you. What 49ers skill player scares you the most in this game? We know the 49ers have a pretty stacked offense at the skill positions, but what player do you look at in this game? You say the Chiefs have to stop this guy if they want to win.
Yeah, this is a great question because there's so many choices, right? And I think their skill players just kind of illustrate they're kind of like, I hate these analogies get so exhausted, but they're kind of like positionless basketball, Golden State Warriors a little bit, where like you've got Kittle who can like basically be an extra offensive lineman, but then also line up in the slot and can, house a pass at the 50-yard line. You've got Deebo Samuel, who is a guy who can catch the ball down the field, but is also like basically a running back and is so great with yards after the catch. You've got Christian McCaffrey, who can line up in the slot and run a real wide receiver route. And then you've got Brandon Ayuk, who is kind of like their most complete wide receiver. And Juwan Jennings isn't a terrible wide receiver 3. He'd probably be like the second best receiver on the Chiefs right now. I think personally, it's tough. I think about who are the players that I feel like the Chiefs don't have an answer for. And if you think back, I'm not sure this season the Chiefs have really faced a tight end like George Kittle. They faced Laporta very, very early in the year before he was the player that he became. They don't really have any dynamic tight ends in the division that come to mind. I'm struggling to think of it. They did a pretty good job of controlling Kincaid and Knox, but I think it's Kittle. Because I think the Chiefs tackle better than, especially their secondary, tackles better than almost any team in the NFL. That stretch outside zone that Christian McCaffrey likes to run and the Deebo Samuel run after the catch, I do think that they will get some there, but I don't think that that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But if you want to tell me there's a player that we're just lamenting, and I trust L'Jarius Sneed or Trent McDuffie to at least make Brandon Ayuk work hard for his. Like, it's going to be kind of like one of those Jamar Chase, like 4 for 41 games where it's like, okay, he had some plays, but they were never backbreaking. But George Kittle, you're relying on Nick Bolton, Justin Reed, a secondary that's a little depleted without Brian Cook. That's the one person I could see maybe being just a game breaker that ultimately, if he has 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, that's the player.
That's a really interesting answer. I thought I was teeing it up for Christian McCaffrey there, but you really can't go wrong with any of them, in my opinion, because they have so many guys. I just feel like it's Christian McCaffrey because of that receiving threat out of the backfield that he is. And we know that the Chiefs kind of like to leave the flats open. They've also struggled to stop the run this year. That has been their one true Achilles heel on defense. But I mean, George Kittle too. That's a good answer because, as you said, we haven't seen a tight end like him this year. That said, though, I do like our secondary. Justin Reed has been playing really good football in the postseason, and then you also have Drew Tranquil, who is your best coverage linebacker, and he just raises the ceiling of the linebacker room immensely to the point where I think you have enough guys that you can throw at Kittle, but easier said than done.
And I mean, I think the Bills game is a really good kind of blueprint to like maybe what the Chiefs are thinking about with the Niners. I know a lot of people, when they come in and play the 49ers, the first thing they're saying is, how do we stop this run game? How do we stop Christian McCaffrey? But if you're the Chiefs,
yeah,
you could almost live with, 3 yards and then 6 yards and then 2 yards and then -1 and then one. The dink and dunk, or the slow systematic progression of the 49ers offense through McCaffrey, you can probably live with that. It's the huge, massive chunks over the middle of the field that they do so well with that really breaks the back of the offense. So maybe this is a game where, like, because they basically turned Josh Allen into like 2013 Alex Smith in that game. He threw some awesome passes down the field, but for the most part, they challenged him to make hero ball plays, and their wide receivers didn't come down with it. They kind of did the same thing with the Ravens too. That touchdown to Zay Flowers, that was like a 1% play that they just happened to make. Credit the 2 players who made it, but they made everything hard. And I could see them actually being like, okay, you want to run Christian McCaffrey into our light boxes, that's fine. But Ayuk, Kittle, and Samuel aren't killing us.
Yeah, man, that's good stuff right there. Next question for you. Can the pass rush generate enough pressure without Chris Jones? This is one of my favorite questions that I had written down for today because I feel like this is one that, outside of the offense and how they perform, is the biggest factor in this game, because you're going to have to get pressure on Brock Purdy in this game. You cannot just allow him to sit back there and throw. But do you think they can generate enough of that pressure without Charles Omenihu? How much of this is going to be on Chris Jones's shoulders? Do you think Karlaftis and Dana are going to have to step up? What's your take here?
Yeah, obviously the loss of Charles Omenihu, it's a big deal, especially because he's been able to be that player. Him and George Karlaftis, their ability to win one-on-one when Chris Jones is getting that attention, it's been huge. And then just the small, step-up plays from players like Tershawn Wharton, Mike Dana, those type of players, it's been huge. And I think the best thing, and probably like the most underrated part of this story, is just how much weaker, again, kind of going back to that theme of like, oh, this is just like 2019, but it's not at all. How much weaker the 49ers offensive line is now than it was. That 49ers offensive line did not have Trent Williams in 2019, but they had Alex Mack, they had Mike McGlinchey, they had a lot of really solid players on the offensive line. It's basically Trent Williams and a bunch of guys on the offensive line.
Yep, that's what I've been saying all week.
I suspect that, and something that's nice too is like, it's kind of all on one side. You've got Cole McKivitz, the right tackle, who's been rough. The center's been all right. But I suspect that the Chiefs will probably do something like basically just put someone on Trent Williams who can maintain the point of attack. So that's probably like Mike Dana. He's probably one of their better run-defending edge players. And then they will probably stunt and do things on the right side of the lines. I suspect we will see Chris Jones lined up head over Cole McKivitz several times in key situations. You got George Karlaftis who can mix inside as well. It does really stink to lose Omenihu. I think like his ability to play inside outside has been huge. And obviously they're probably going to be mixing in Felix Anudike Uzama as well. But they've also been really big into the simulated pressures as well. We've seen them use Willie Gay and Leo Chanel as rushers as well. I would say that the 49ers offensive line has struggled to pick up the blitz at times. Now, Brock Purdy is one of the best quarterbacks in the league against the blitz, but do you tempt him to try to make those plays again? So I definitely think that it's not going to be as easy as it was. But again, I have just a ton of faith in Steve Spagnuolo being able to get pressure on a quarterback who's never seen his looks before and who is somewhat limited physically.
So that's actually a good segue into my next question, because my next question was going to be, can Brock Purdy really win the Super Bowl? And I think getting pressure on him is going to help us answer that question. You did mention, though, and that's what I was going to bring up, that his numbers this year are really good against the blitz. However, we know that Steve Spagnuolo loves to blitz. Like that's what he does. He's going to blitz. He's going to. But I do think that the way that Spags blitzes has to be considered when answering that question, because Spags is so good at bringing pressure from a bunch of different places that the Niners aren't going to see it coming from. So with that being said, what do you think? Can Brock Purdy really beat Patrick Mahomes and win this Super Bowl?
I certainly think it's possible. And it's weird because like this Brock Purdy conversation, it's one of the weirdest conversations that like we've had in football in a while. And it's like this thing where everyone wants to break it down into like that the NFL is just this year by year thing. And you see it. Like last year, Patrick Mahomes literally has the perfect quarterback season. It's hard to imagine a quarterback having a much better season. And then we get into like week 10 and you've got people saying Trevor Lawrence is better than Patrick Mahomes. It's like, what are we doing? Like last year literally happened. What are we doing here? And people do it with Brock Purdy as well too, where it's like, you know, what does he accomplish? What is he as far as a player? His detractors are going to say, look at the weapons, look at the system, look how good players have been in the system with Kyle Shanahan. And the supporters are going to say, like, who has a better win percentage? Who has, you know, look at the stats. Here's what I'll say about Brock Purdy. I think that he has come the closest to unlocking that Kyle Shanahan system since Matt Ryan. Obviously, Matt Ryan won that MVP with Kyle Shanahan in Atlanta. Yep. And Matt Ryan's a great quarterback. Kyle Shanahan has constantly tried to get a more mobile quarterback into that system. They tried it by bringing in Sam Darnold. They did it with the trade up for Trey Lance. And Brock Purdy, his ability to scramble really showed up in the NFC Championship game. He is a, you know, somewhat limited physical player. He's not the person that's going to be, you know, rolling right and throw a ball across the field. It's much different than playing Josh Allen. However, the supporting cast, the scheme, I absolutely think they can win a Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Do I think that it's likely or probable? No, but I can paint you lots of pictures where it happens. And I think like the number one way where that starts is him playing within himself. Is he able to prevent 2 or 3 mistakes that could happen that other players have made against the Chiefs defense? To his credit, Brock Purdy has got some voodoo magic. I think he's had like 2 or 3 dropped interceptions in these playoffs. But if he can limit those plays and, you know, run the Shanahan system like it's supposed to be run and then scramble for a few key first downs, I totally think it's possible.
Okay, we're back. I lost you for a second. I'm sorry. My internet is really acting up, but I think I switched it over to a hotspot instead while you were talking. Okay. So hopefully we should be good now.
Yeah,
so if you
I just think that like for him to win the Super Bowl, it's going to be about limiting mistakes, getting the ball to his playmakers in the right way, and then 2 or 3 times, and we see this with Patrick Mahomes right now too. They basically asked Pat to be himself, the 2018 version of himself, 2 or 3 times a game. The MVS pass, the scramble to Kelsey where he held the ball for 10 seconds. Brock Purdy can make a couple of those plays. So yeah, I totally think it's possible. I wouldn't say that it's likely or probable, but I do think it's possible.
Yeah, no, that's a really good answer. I have respect for Brock Purdy. I do think that you do have to admit that Kyle Shanahan's offense is very quarterback friendly, but I think what makes Brock Purdy different than Jimmy G or any of these other recent 49ers quarterbacks is that he can move a little bit more than those guys and he can extend plays himself. Shanahan's offense is very scripted, and you know that Purdy's going to be sticking to that script most of the time, but he can run outside the pocket, and he does like to run a little bit himself, which makes him a little bit tougher. There's more elements to worry about there with Brock Purdy in his game. I do think he's a good quarterback. I do think, though, that he does make some silly throws that maybe Patrick Mahomes wouldn't make at this stage of his career, and you can capitalize on some of those potential mistakes. I don't know if you have anything to add there. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and move on to the next question.
I think the most like realistic approach to take to the Brock Purdy discourse is just how many teams could you put Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen on, and they still be great quarterbacks? How many teams can you put Brock Purdy on, and he'd still be one of the best quarterbacks in the league? I feel like that list is much shorter. And,
for sure.
To your point, it's just so weird. Like your draft pick, it just sticks with you your whole career. Like, we still get Jadeveon Clowney getting, $11 million, $12 million a year because he was a 1-1. And Brock Purdy, every time he does something great, he's the gritty underdog and he's a great story. But every time he does something stupid, it's the Gordon Ramsay meme, like, you donkey, you idiot. Why would you do that? Yeah. Because you're 7th round pick, of course. So he just has those moments. And I honestly, I think that's part of what some of the charm is for the 49ers too, is like Jimmy Garoppolo, he played so conservative sometimes that when things broke down, there was no other choice, right? It was just like, oh God, I panic and I overthrow Emmanuel Sanders. But like Brock Purdy, he'll send one down the field and it'll bounce off a player's face mask and then Brandon Ayuk catches it. So he plays like a 7th round player in a good way and a bad way at times.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So next question. We're down to our last couple. So Sky Moore was activated off of IR yesterday, or he's designated to return. So there's a chance he's active for this game. I decided to throw him in this question, but it was mainly going to be about Kadarius Toney before yesterday's news. So I'll just ask you this: does Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore play in the Super Bowl?
I think one of the two certainly does. Someone pointed out that this is basically the exact same path that Clyde Edwards-Helaire had last year, as far as like returning, his practice window being opened. I think that I hope that the Chiefs are smart enough to realize that they've got a good system going on offense, and some of it has been, process of elimination, addition by subtraction. Taking Sky Moore, and I think there's two very different players here. Like Kadarius Toney, the mistakes were just so egregious that was literally harming the team. Sky Moore was basically just a net neutral or maybe a slight negative. He's had some drops. His problem is he would play 45 snaps and not get a single target, and that just says something when you've got a great quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I assume one of them will be active. It's tough because some of the things the 49ers defense struggles with, defending the stretch outside zone run that the Chiefs don't do a ton of now with their offensive line and Pacheco. Kadarius Toney's looked pretty good as a running back, honestly. I think he's had like 3 or 4 carries where he gets like 10 or 12 yards every time. And obviously we know what he can do as a punt returner. The one thing that I come back to with Kadarius Toney is like, you just got to go back to the idiot test a little bit. If we're sitting here Sunday night crying in our beers, talking about why the Chiefs lost, and one of the reasons we bring up is, well, Kadarius Toney, when he muffed that punt, that just was a backbreaker. You cannot, after this year, go back and say, yeah, we stuck Kadarius Toney after him being awful and the offense looking way better. We forced him back into the offense or to the game plan. Yeah. That just feels way stupider than like, hey, Sky Moore showed up. He played a couple special teams reps. Maybe they used to use him in the sweep game a little bit last year. Maybe he gets a sweep or something like that.
Sure.
I don't know, because of how the Chiefs, it's the same thing with Jerick McKinnon. The way that they like to do their IR returns, usually they have a player practice for a week and then they fully activate them and have them play the following week. So McKinnon and Sky Moore might not play. With the Instagram live and then him having that weird interview on Monday night where he's like, oh, I'm a wide receiver 1 and someone used AI to impersonate me. That was actually about the Giants. Like there's just so much bad vibes around him. I really hope that neither player plays, frankly. I think Sky Moore might be a little bit more useful because he is kind of a several phase player. He does contribute on special teams. He does contribute as a blocker. And, Sky Moore, like Kadarius Toney's like the weird player that like plays 5 snaps and then has 2 of the biggest plays in the game in last year's Super Bowl. So I think it's best that they just sit them both out, honestly.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. Like, you don't want to mess with the wide receiver rotation anymore because you finally have it in a good place. And like Sky Moore, like you said, he'll go out there, he'll play like 70% of the snaps and he'll do nothing with them. And it's like you kind of already have Richie James for that. And Richie James, at least, I remember in the Baltimore game, he at least drew a pass interference in that game. So like he's doing something, whereas like Sky Moore really did nothing all year long. And I feel like you don't want to mess with that anymore.
Yeah, and one thing that I keep coming back to is how important the jet sweep play action game was against that 49ers game last year. They basically mitigated Nick Bosa that way against Andrew Wiley. And Juwan Taylor, I think, is a better pass blocker than Andrew Wiley. I know the penalties have been bad, but I keep coming back to that. The Chiefs basically have nobody to do that right now. Sky Moore has done it at times. Mecole Hardman has just been absolutely brutal.
Yeah, it's almost like it's almost like, do you trust Mecole Hardman to take one of these and not fumble it? Because if he can, I mean, he is the type of player you would typically go to for that. But I don't know, maybe it would just be safer to use Rashee Rice or something.
Yeah, I do think that is a part of the game plan that they will go back to, even if they don't actually hand it off to them. I think that they just want Bosa to practice that pause of like, oh wait, do I need to like rush or do I need to set the And I suspect that they will run at Chase Young a lot. He's looked pretty brutal as a run defender as well. So I do think that, like, if we're sitting here being like, wow, Kadarius Toney, huge player in this game, how did this happen? Like, that would be an element of like, oh, they needed someone to do that jet sweep action.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So that brings us to our final question. Sixth burning question. Who wins this game? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I've been saying pretty much since midweek last week, I think that it's the Chiefs. I think if you just start lining up the things that matter the most in important games, especially after a bye week, the Chiefs just have the advantage in so many important places. You run down the roster, head coach, you're definitely giving it to the Chiefs. Kyle Shanahan has had his, he's a great play designer, he's a great offensive mind, but he struggles in game management. He's good for a blunder every game, especially in the playoffs. Yeah. You go to quarterback, decidedly the Chiefs. I know Brock Purdy's playing well. You go to the defense. The Chiefs are the better defense. The only, real advantage that you're given to the 49ers is the skill players. And then maybe if you want to get really in the nitty gritty, they have a slightly better linebacking core than the Chiefs. I think their top end is better than the Chiefs. The Chiefs' depth is better at linebacker.
Yeah.
And also one that I'll bring up, the Chiefs have been excellent on special teams all year. Harrison Butker, if he's running out there and it's a big kick, you feel incredibly confident about that. The 49ers kicker has missed 3 kicks this postseason. He's a rookie. The Chiefs just have the advantage in all the places that matter, besides skill players. And the only thing that scares me is how many people are lined up on the Chiefs. Usually when you start looking around and, you see the pregame people and they all pick them, and then like you look at the percentage of bets and everyone picks the Super Bowl, you start looking at all the people on the Chiefs and you're like, wait, am I the idiot here? Like, what am I missing here? Like, because usually, like, Las Vegas keeps building casinos for a reason, right? It's because they make money. Yeah. They know how to make money out of the situation. Why is it still San Francisco minus 2.5 if everyone is still lining up on the Chiefs? And I'm not really sure about that. I just, like I said, I just go back to like the advantages that the Chiefs have. They are in the places that matter the most. That I feel pretty good about it. I've said Chiefs 28-20 is the final score. I think that the Chiefs at some point kind of take a firm control of this game in the third quarter, and the 49ers storm back some to make it a 1-score game, but the Chiefs are able to, get that key first down and kneel the ball out at the end or something like that, or it's a turnover that seals the game for them. So 28-20 Chiefs.
I like that prediction. I'll throw this in too. I feel like because the Chiefs were underdogs last year against the Philadelphia Eagles, if I remember correctly, like 2.5 points or something like that. The Eagles were favored by, and I feel like it's mostly because people fall in love with the talent from top to bottom that Philly had, or this year that the Niners have. And I feel because we saw this last year with the Eagles, it's like the Chiefs have probably the number 1 and 2 best players in this game, and then the Niners maybe have like 3 through 7 or something like that, and that's fine and dandy, but that number 1 I feel like is what matters the most, because the Chiefs have the best player in this game, and that is Patrick Mahomes, and I think that needs to start holding more weight in Vegas than it has really the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think like the betting market and fantasy football and all those things kind of play a part in this too. It's way more fun to line up some prop bets and overs on McCaffrey and Debo and Ayuk and Kittle than it is to be like, oh, they're going to sprinkle the ball to Rashee Rice a little bit, and then they're going to sprinkle it to Justin Watson a little bit. I definitely think that plays a part in it too. And like I said earlier, there are still a lot of people who think that the Niners have the better top to bottom roster, and that's just it's just inaccurate. Like I think you said it well. Like I think if we're making the top 15 or top 10 players, the 49ers might have a few more at the top because of Trent Williams, because of Bosa, because of Javon Hargrave. But the depth of the team of the Chiefs is what has made them the team that they are. The fact that they can lose Brian Cook, that they can lose Nick Bolton for games, that they can lose Charles Omenihu, and you've got a Mike Edwards and a Drew Tranquill to step in. That's been huge. And, there are a few players in every game that if you lose them, you're screwed, right? If Brock Purdy goes down, the 49ers probably don't feel great about their chances. If Travis Kelce were to go down, that's really going to hurt the Chiefs. No team is bulletproof, but the Chiefs have a lot of depth that it feels like that is part of the reason why they are here. So it's not sexy. It's not fun to bet on, but when it comes to these games, head coach, quarterback, special teams, defense, that's the stuff that really matters. And we've seen Tom Brady win a lot of games that way.
Yeah, you feel like the best quarterback in the elite defense is the better bet in this game, and the team that's done it before, I should add, because the Chiefs have done it before, the Niners haven't, and there's a lot of pressure that comes with that, and just they still had that monkey on their back.
Yeah, I wrote a piece talking about the sheer differential in Super Bowl starts and wins between the two teams. Even though the 2019 game happened, I believe the numbers were like
There's not
16.
many guys left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's 16 total Super Bowl starts on the 49ers roster. You get to include a couple from like Charvarius Ward, and then some of the players from the 2019 team, and 4 Super Bowl rings on that team. Whereas the Chiefs, I believe it was 66 total Super Bowl starts and 48 Super Bowl championships. Because keep in, you got Joe Tooney, you've got 3 or 4 Buccaneers players who won a ring with Tom Brady, like Blaine Gabbert, Mike Edwards, those guys, Justin Watson. There's a lot of experience on this team, and that's the type of stuff that matters. I mean, honestly, the first quarter of the Chiefs looked like the much more composed, ready to play team in the AFC Championship game. The lights got a little bright for the Ravens, and that ended up being the difference in the game because the second half was almost, a net neutral the whole time. So, yeah, I definitely think that's a huge factor too.
Yep, I agree with you there, man. This has been a great episode, but we'll go ahead and wrap it up. But before I do that, Price, it was nice having you on today, but why don't you let everyone know where they can find your stuff, whether it's social media, your stuff on Arrowhead Addict. I know you have a draft big board that you're doing this year. So you want to tell people a little bit about that?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Price A Carter. And then, like you said, Arrowhead Addicts, where all my work is. I do a little bit of work for Fansided's draft website as well, called With the First Pick. Haven't been doing a whole lot of that here lately. Life's been busy. I broke my ankle, had like 7 screws put in, had a newborn. Life's been a little hectic here lately. So I'll definitely get back to doing some more film review for the site for With the First Pick. But yeah, my goal is next Friday after the Super Bowl, after a parade, we'll drop our top 75 big board. Right now, I updated that mid-November, so there's some guys who didn't end up declaring that I took off. I've actually finalized the list. I just need to do the write-ups on the players, but that's a Chiefs-centric big board for the draft too. So you're not going to find quarterbacks. You're going to find less weighted needs on positions like interior offensive line or cornerback, and more focus on the positions that really matter for the Chiefs. So that way you can scroll. You don't have to look, I know so much draft analysis is filtered through the quarterbacks. You don't have to worry about reading about Caleb Williams or Drake May here. It's all Chiefs centric.
For sure. So yeah, you guys can check all that out. I'll have that down in the description below. That'll do it for today. As far as my stuff, you can subscribe. Make sure you like and share. Some more Chiefs fans can find this. You can check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com for more. But with all that being said, we will see you guys in the next one. Go Chiefs.